Sir, are you lost? This section is reserved for distinguished guests and active duty command only. The words cut through the warm Coronado air like a blade. They belong to Lieutenant Commander Davies, a young officer whose crisp uniform seemed sharper than his judgment. His mirrored sunglasses reflected an old man in a rumpled gray suit, someone he clearly considered beneath him, someone who didn't belong. The elderly veteran stood quietly, holding his invitation with weathered hands that had seen more than Davies could ever imagine. Those hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from age and a lifetime of sacrifice. Davies smirked, his arrogance on full display. He reached out, placing his hand on the old man's shoulder with casual disrespect, ready to remove him from the ceremony. But as the suit jacket shifted, something appeared on the veteran's forearm, a faded tattoo, a symbol that made time itself seem to stop. What happened next would change everything Davies thought he knew about respect, honor, and what it truly means to serve. Samuel Carter had left his home in the Sierra Nevada foothills before dawn. The drive to Naval Amphibious Base Coronado took 12 hours, winding down through mountain passes where pine trees gave way to desert, then finally to the salt-tinged air of the Pacific coast. His old truck rattled with every mile, but he didn't mind. Today was worth every minute of discomfort. His grandson Ethan was graduating from Bud's training, earning the right to call himself a Navy SEAL. Samuel remembered the boy at 8 years old, sitting on the dock behind their cabin, asking endless questions about courage and duty. He remembered teaching Ethan how to field strip a carburetor, how to read the forest, how to stay calm when everything around you demanded panic. The boy had always been special, driven by something deeper than youthful ambition. The Coronado base felt both foreign and familiar. Samuel hadn't been back to a military ceremony in decades. The sharp commands, the pristine formations, the young faces filled with pride and fire. It all stirred memories he'd carefully packed away. This world of Navy SEALs had grown from seeds planted long ago, in jungles and shadows, where men like him had written the first chapters in blood and silence. Section A, Row 3, that's what the invitation said. Ethan had insisted, had made special arrangements. Samuel found the seat and settled in, his old bones grateful for the rest. That's when Davies appeared. The lieutenant commander was everything modern naval special warfare prided itself on. Technically brilliant, physically imposing, fast-tracked for command. He wore his achievements like armor, and his confidence bordered on arrogance. When he saw Samuel, he saw an obstacle, an error in the system, someone who clearly didn't understand how important this event was. "Pops, with all due respect." "There's probably been a mistake," Davies said, his tone dripping with condescension. "This is VIP seating for the Buds' graduation. Why don't you head over to general admission with the rest of the families?" Samuel's voice remained calm, a low rumble with traces of the South still clinging to his words. "My grandson sent this invitation himself, said it was all arranged. The boy probably got it wrong." Davies didn't even try to hide his impatience. "Look, I don't have time to argue. The ceremony starts in 15 minutes. Move along, or I'll have to get security." He stepped closer, his posture designed to intimidate. In his world of digital warfare, and advanced metrics, this old man in his outdated suit was an analog relic, an inconvenience to be cleared away. Several rows back, Petty Officer 3rd Class Miller watched the scene unfold with growing unease. Miller knew Davies by reputation. Hotshot Davies, they called him. Brilliant, but completely lacking in humility. Miller had grown up hearing stories from his own grandfather, a Marine who had fought at Chosin Reservoir. That man had taught him that respect for those who came before wasn't just courtesy, it was sacred duty. Watching Davies treat this elderly veteran like trash being swept from the floor made Miller's stomach turn. The old man's quiet dignity, the way he refused to be rattled even as Davies escalated, it reminded Miller of his grandfather. Men like that didn't need to raise their voices. Their presence spoke volumes. "What is this? Bring your grandpa to work day?" Davies announced loudly, performing for the small audience of nearby officers and families. "Sir, I'm giving you a direct order to vacate this restricted area. Now!" He grabbed Samuel's shoulder, fingers pressing into the thin wool of the suit jacket. As he forced the old man to stand, the sleeve rode up, exposing several inches of Samuel's forearm. Miller saw something there, something that made his blood run cold. He slipped away from his post, hands shaking as he pulled out his phone. He knew what he was risking. Complaining about an officer, especially a rising star, was career suicide, but his grandfather's voice echoed in his mind. Some things are worth the cost, son. Some lines can't be uncrossed. The number belonged to a retiring Master Chief who'd given Miller one instruction. Only use this if you see something that's about to break the Navy's soul, kid. This was that moment. The phone rang twice. Reynolds, a gruff voice answered. Captain Reynolds, sir. This is Petty Officer Miller at the Bud's graduation ceremony. Miller's words tumbled out in a rush. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Davies is forcibly removing an elderly veteran from the VIP section. The man has a valid invitation, but Davies is humiliating him in front of everyone. Silence on the line. Then, describe the veteran. Elderly, sir. Late 70s, maybe. Gray hair, simple suit. Very calm. He has these incredibly clear blue eyes, sir. Another pause. Longer. Is Davies touching him? Yes, sir. He's got his hand on him right now, trying to push him out. Stay where you are, Miller. Captain Reynolds' voice had turned to steel. I'm on my way. The line went dead. Back in Section A, Davies had successfully forced Samuel into the aisle. See, was that so hard? He said with a smug grin, flagging down 2 security personnel. Escort this gentleman to the main gate. He seems confused. Then came the sound that changed everything. The sharp, authoritative blast of a staff car's horn cut through the crowd's murmur like a gunshot. A gleaming black sedan with command flags on its fenders screeched to a halt on the adjacent access road, a place where no vehicle was ever supposed to be. The back door flew open before the car fully stopped. Captain Frank Reynolds stepped out, and the entire world seemed to snap to attention. Reynolds was a legend. A veteran of operations in 4 different theaters, his face was a roadmap of hard-won experience. He'd led teams through situations that would break most men, and he carried that weight with a presence that commanded instant respect. Every sailor, every officer, every guest fell silent. Davies froze mid-sentence, confusion and panic warring on his face. Captain, he stammered, throwing up a clumsy salute. Unexpected pleasure, sir. Reynolds' granite eyes swept past him without acknowledgement. They scanned the scene, the security guards, the flustered lieutenant commander, and finally locked onto the old man standing calmly in the aisle. The transformation in Reynolds' face was instantaneous. The hard-as-nails expression melted away, replaced by something Davies had never seen before. Pure, unadulterated reverence. Reynolds strode forward with purpose, the crowd parting before him like water. He walked directly to Samuel, stopped exactly 3 feet away, drew himself to his full height, and executed the sharpest, most perfect salute of his entire career. The gesture sent a collective gasp through the onlookers. Mr. Carter, Reynolds said, his voice thick with emotion. It's an honor, sir. We had no idea you were gracing us with your presence today. Samuel gave a small nod. Frank, it's been a long time. You were just a lieutenant last I saw you. Davies' mind was screaming error messages. Carter, Mr. Carter, why was the base commander saluting this lost old man? Reynolds' gaze fell to where Davies had grabbed Samuel's arm. His eyes turned to ice. He turned slowly, pinning Davies with a look of pure, controlled fury. Lieutenant Commander Davies, Reynolds said quietly, each word a hammer blow. Explain to me, in very small words, what you were doing. Sir, this man, he was in a restricted area, Davies stammered. His invitation was for general seating, I assumed. You assumed. The words hung like a death sentence. You saw a man of his age and assumed he was weak. You saw his simple clothes and assumed he was unimportant. Reynolds gently took Samuel's arm, his touch respectful. Please, sir, your sleeve is out of place. He carefully pulled the jacket sleeve back down, but not before everyone, especially Davies, got a clear look. The tattoo was faded, the ink blurred by decades of sun and salt water. But its design was unmistakable. A coiled serpent wrapped around a trident piercing through a skull. Beneath it, stark and simple, the designation GRU 734. Captain Reynolds saw it and froze, his breath catching. He'd only seen that symbol once before, in a file so highly classified that reading it required 3 separate security clearances. It was a ghost story, a legend whispered about in the highest echelons of SOCOM. My God, Reynolds breathed. It's real. The Reapers. He turned to address the entire assembly, his voice rising with controlled passion. Officers, sailors, guests. You think you're here to see the graduation of the world's most elite warriors? You are. But today, you are also in the presence of the man who wrote the book they study from. He pointed at Samuel. This is Samuel the Ghost Carter. Before there were SEALs as you know them, before Dev grew, there were men like him. He was a founding member of MACV-SOG, running black operations in places your history books will never mention. He was a plank owner of Unit 734, the Reapers, a direct action unit tasked with missions so sensitive that the files were ordered burned but were instead buried in a vault 100 feet underground. The crowd hung on every word. Davies looked ready to collapse. That faded Navy cross pinned inside his jacket, Reynolds continued, that's one of 3. The other 2 are still classified. This man perfected halo jumping when pilots thought it was suicide. The Carter method of hostile room entry is the foundational tactic still taught today at the highest levels. He conducted solo reconnaissance missions lasting weeks deep in enemy territory, with nothing but a knife, a rifle, and the steel in his spine. Reynolds' voice dropped, but somehow became more powerful. The call sign Ghost wasn't a nickname, it was a description. He would enter hostile camps, eliminate high-value targets, and vanish before anyone knew he existed. Entire enemy platoons were terrified of a single man they could never see. He stepped toward Davies. Lieutenant Commander, this man has bled more for this country than you have sweat. The ground you stand on was paid for by him and men like him. And you dared put your hands on him. The shame crashed over Davies like a wave. You are relieved of your command, effective immediately. But then Samuel did something no one expected. He placed a gentle hand on Reynolds' arm. Frank, he said softly, the boy is young. He's full of pride and fire. That's what this place makes. It's a good thing. Don't snuff it out. Just teach him where to aim it. He made a mistake. Let him learn from it. The grace in those words was staggering. Reynolds stared at Samuel, his anger deflating. As you wish, sir, he turned back to Davies. You heard him. You've been granted mercy you don't deserve. You're assigned to the Naval Archives at the Washington Navy Yard. For the next year, you'll read the unredacted service records of men from his generation. You'll write reports on every single one. Maybe then you'll learn that the uniform you wear is a privilege, not a right. Davies could only nod, his throat too tight for words. Now get out of my sight. The ceremony began with a new energy. It was no longer just about the future of the teams. It was about honoring the sacred past that made them possible. When Ethan Carter's name was called, he walked across the stage on legs that felt uncertain. He received his trident, the golden symbol he'd dreamed of since childhood, and his eyes found his grandfather in the front row. In that look, a lifetime of understanding passed between them. Every fishing trip, every quiet lesson, every moment of gentle guidance suddenly made sense. His grandfather hadn't just taught him how to be a man. He'd taught him how to be a warrior without ever saying the word. Later, as crowds thinned and the California sun began its descent into the Pacific, Ethan walked beside Samuel along the beach. The salt air was cool, filled with the eternal rhythm of waves. Grandpa, Ethan's voice was thick with emotion. Why? All those years, all my talk about wanting to be like the heroes I read about. Why didn't you ever tell me you were one? Samuel stopped and looked out at the ocean, his pale blue eyes seeming to see beyond the horizon, into decades of memories both terrible and sacred. He placed his heavy, calloused hand on Ethan's shoulder, the same spot Davies had grabbed in anger, but this touch carried only love and weight. Because the work was the only thing that mattered, son. Not the medals, not the stories, the work, and the men beside me. When it's all said and done, you'll find the quietest men in the room are often the ones with the loudest histories. They don't need to talk about it. They lived it. He looked at his grandson, a Navy SEAL now, carrying forward a legacy he'd only just discovered. Remember that when you lead your men. Substance over style, always. Ethan nodded, the lesson sinking deeper than any training at Bud's ever could. He wasn't just a SEAL. He was the grandson of the Ghost, and he had a legacy not of fame to live up to, but of quiet, humble, and unbreakable service. The stories of true heroes are often the ones never told, living quietly among us, waiting for the moment when their legacy is finally recognized. If this story touched something in your heart, if it reminded you of a quiet hero in your own life, subscribe to BR Veteran Stories and share this message. Because these lessons of humility, respect, and true service must never be forgotten. Hit that subscribe button and leave a comment about the unsung hero in your life. Their stories deserve to be honored.